Welcome to Camper Van Conversion in bite-sized chunks. If you happen to have come across this page through some random link, you might want to click on the link in the top right hand corner to take you back to the introduction to tell you a little bit more about these videos and how you can get the best out of them. Alright, I'm going to talk about electrics. First of all I want to say, eBay's great, isn't it? I got pretty well all of my stuff off of eBay. And it didn't take me long to find out that you buy something from some UK distributor and they bought that product from China and they've marked it up 30, 40, 50%. And so planning ahead is the key there, and you can get it from the Chinese suppliers direct. I've not had a bad experience. That the kit's good, the service is good, and they always send an email saying, look, I know you're in England, it's going to take a long time, but we're tracking it. I've just had no bad experience with Chinese suppliers with electrical kit off of eBay when I was building my van. So anyway, and the stuff you'll see in the resource library that features in this little video clip, most of that has come out of suppliers from eBay. Planning is paramount. I can talk a little bit about that. Essentially, you need to get your wire transits in your mind worked out before you kick off, because once your lining's up, your cover's up, it gets a whole lot more difficult. And I actually worked out in my mind what I wanted in design, and I kind of drew up a circuit diagram as well on my computer, geeking out a bit. In fact, here's mine, 2 pages of that, just to give me some guidance to get underway. You may choose not to do that, but what I would say, planning is paramount. Now, if you haven't seen it already, it might be worth it to kind of pausing this video and going to watch the one where I'm installing the parking cameras on the back of the van first, because a lot of the electrical sort of principles are in that one, and you'll see in there how I was running the wire transits from the front of the van down to the back where the cameras were, through ribs in the van area, because I was fishing them through. You need to work out where your transits are and get them in first, even if you haven't got the actual kit there, because once your lining's up and your cover's up, it gets a lot more difficult. The only thing I would say is, I didn't do this, I wish I had. It might pay you to, in addition, put a channel, sort of like a conduit, sort of from the back of the van to the front, that you could use for any subsequent wiring that you think about, that you then want to install. Because I had that situation. I thought, oh no, I didn't think about that, and I had to sort of drop the liners off the roof and kind of feed a wire sort of just underneath, jam it underneath the liner. It was just a little bit of a hassle, and if I'd had a sort of a dedicated front to back conduit, I could just feed some wire down. That would have helped. And you're going to see some pictures of me putting stuff up out there anyway. I'm going to talk about the Zig box. Now the Zig box is basically a control box which controls all your circuits and gives you battery condition, that sort of thing. Called a Zig box because Zig is one of the most popular makes, and even people who I've met with campers who've not used a different model, a different make, have referred to them as Zig boxes. Now actually I didn't buy a proprietary box, I made my own because I've done a bit of electrical stuff in the past and I wanted a channel for each individual sort of circuit, and you'll see that in the video. But if you're not cool about doing that sort of thing, I think Zig's probably your best way to go. I'll put some stuff in the resource library, because what I am told is the instructions are very, very clear and it's very easy to wire up, and you can get ones with built-in battery chargers and goodness knows what. So not cheap bits of kit, but they do so much. So Zig may be sort of your way to go if you're not going to build your own controller. I'll talk about electrical saving stuff. I've only got one battery in my van, and a lot of people aren't doing that. In the old days, you'd have sort of maybe a couple, 2 70-amp-hour batteries. So if one was discharged, you could switch over to the other. But these days, you can get leisure batteries that are 120 amp hours, and so you provided you sort of keep sort of on top of the discharge. That's all you need. So I've adapted things like LEDs all the way around. And you'll see also I put some sort of energy saving measures in the van as well, and little tips to sort of stop you accidentally wasting electric. That'll be in this video as well. I'll talk a bit more about battery charging as we go into it. It's sort of three ways that I'm charging the battery. One through the engine, the other through the solar collector on top. And I have got 240 volt hookup in my van. Going to show you that sort of stuff. And part of that deployment is a pulse float charger that I use when I'm hooked up, just to pulse the leisure battery to keep it topped up. So that's the electrical stuff we're going to cover, and hope you find it useful.
So you've got a picture of me here in the early days, just getting my wire transits in. You can see I've just got the installation in. That's about it really. I haven't got any light in the van. The windows aren't cut, so it's got to be an early job there. You can see those ribs that I talked about. Let's put an arrow on those. That's the top one there that I threaded the cables for the camera through. And there's them coming out, ready to go to the cameras on the outside of the van. There's a middle rib there that I also threaded cables through. And if you look here, you'll see there's a bunch of wires coming out of the ribs. And they're some of the lighting wires, which I'm actually fitting up in that picture there. There's also the big thick wire is the white cable that's coming from the back for the hookup, and in that position is where I worked out my switch box was going to be, the cupboard with the switch box. So it was all about getting the planning right, getting most of the transits in position before I'd done anything else. Okay, so talk about switch box then, the Zig box, my homemade Zig box. There it is in its cupboard. I used one the aircraft locker that turned onto the bathroom module. Across the top there I've got switches for individual channels, the lights, the downlighters, the ensuite, the kitchen unit, the media center, etc. I've got a voltmeter in there. It's reading 13.7 just to keep the condition of the battery checked out. To the left of that black panel there is a water meter tester. I've got a sensor in the tank, and I press the button there and you get some traffic lights to tell you how much water you've got. Below that you've got the solar collector controller, and to the right of that I've got two isolators. One is the domestic battery, shuts that off completely from the whole van, and the solar collector shuts it off completely. That little red light underneath, I've got to come back to that. That's the VSR. So back on the main controller again, main panel. To the right of the voltmeter, I've got a switch that would cross over the solar collector, so the solar charger, from the domestic battery, the leisure battery, to the drive battery. So if I'm not using the van for a while, I can sort of keep that topped up. The middle of those three switches is the 240 volt hookup. It turns on, basically turns on the socket that I've got. And then to the right of that is the switch that turns on the charger. If I'm plugged in on the hookup, I can turn the charger on, and that'll keep my leisure battery topped up with a pulse charge. So that's my homemade Zig box. You don't have to make your own, you can buy them, but yeah, I've tucked it away in one of the small aircraft lockers. You can see all the wires coming in from the left there. They've transited through the van, mostly through the ribs to their source positions, and yeah, it took a bit of planning to get it right, but it's worth doing so. So you've got to conserve juice, of course, in your van. I've used LEDs all the way around. There's some top lights in my lining, just gone in. And there's a close-up of one of the chrome fittings, separate light switch on all of them. LED strips, you buy these in a roll. These are about 5 watts per metre, so incredibly economical. And that is actually stuck underneath an aircraft locker above the work surface in the kitchen, so you've got plenty of light to see what you're doing. And I'm also using that inside the ensuite, and I've got 2 strips of those down each corner. You can just about see that. Really makes the ensuite really bright at very little power usage. That little black switch with 3 separate chrome strips on there, they're actual switches, groovy little bit of kit. So one drives the ensuite, turns the ensuite on and off, one turns that downlighter on that I just showed you, and the other one turns an extractor that I built into that aircraft locker you're looking at there. You may recall in the design vid I had a flashing light. There it is there again on the ensuite to alert me that the lights inside are on, because of course you can't see them. Downlighters, LEDs again, that'll be in the resource library. Low energy usage for reading lights. And I got a three-way fridge. I can drive it on gas, 240 or 12 volt. That's when you're driving. You can just get your fridge down to temperature while you're driving. You really need to have the engine running because it's a high consumption thing. So in the cupboard where I've got the controller there for the water heater, if you just look above that controller, you'll see a switch over. It says kitchen terminal or fridge. And basically on kitchen terminal I get the main supply to all the kitchen stuff, but when I switch it to the fridge when I'm driving, it's only the fridge. So there I'm on green, which means it's the main standard configuration for all the kitchen stuff. But then if I go into that cupboard you just looked at there, switch it onto fridge, it switches onto the power to the fridge, and I get that flashing red and blue light, which means, Greg, as soon as you parked up, don't forget you're going to kill your battery unless you turn that onto gas and switch it back to standard again. So as we're discussing on how little tips we can use to save our battery, let's talk about batteries. Apologies if you guys know this, but there's two sorts of batteries. In your car, in the van, you've got your drive battery, the starter battery, but you also need a leisure battery to drive your van itself, you know, the leisure stuff. There are different sorts of batteries, and you can't use a battery designed for starting an engine, because the leisure battery is a deep cycle thing. So there's mine there. It's actually under the sofa, and as I pull the sofa in and out to make the bed, I've got a channel there. You can see that so the battery stays firm. Now, I would strongly recommend you get a completely sealed leisure battery. It's a little bit more expensive. In fact, I think the unsealed ones are going out of fashion, because not only do you not have to top up the water because they're maintenance free, but the older batteries would vent hydrogen gas when it was charging, and you'd have to vent that to the outside atmosphere because you don't want a buildup of hydrogen gas. The newer ones have got chambers inside where the gas, when it stops charging, joins up the oxygen and forms water again, and you don't need to do that venting. To me, it's a no-brainer. Why would you want to go to the hassle of venting a battery? You're just paying a little bit more to get a completely maintenance-free one. So there's my battery under the sofa bed, and I've got a pulse charger for when I'm on hookup. It pulse charges the leisure battery. I can switch it on and off. And if you look above that, you'll see it mounted to the side of the van, about the size of a matchbox. It's got an orange cover and a green cap. That's the VSR. Now, don't be phased by this, because if you're not into electrics, because it's a piece of cake and it's an essential bit of kit. Basically, it sits between your starter battery in the van and your leisure battery. And what it does, it's sensing the voltage of your starter battery, and when it's topped up, it will then switch any surplus juice that your van makes while you're driving to charge the leisure battery. And what that does, it ensures that you've always got your leisure battery topped up when your engine's running, but it doesn't do that unless the leisure battery, the starter battery itself is in good condition. In other words, you're not going to end up with a flat battery and not be able to start your van. Details will be in the resource library. Very easy to wire up. There's also a spare terminal on there that you can hook up that tells you when the VSR is working, and we can see that now. So I've hooked an LED up to that spare terminal. You can see it's pulsing on and off now just as the starter battery is filling up and starting to dump its excess juice to the leisure battery. And in the longer term that will go solid. So my hookup's in the back. Now my socket I've actually put inside the rear doors because there's enough flesh in the rubber seal on the doors that I can actually close them without pinching the wire, which is great because it means no one's going to unplug me at night. Now inside that little locker there, where the hookup is, I've got an RCD trip and circuit breakers, 2 circuits, one for the socket, 240 socket, and one for the rest of the 240 electrics, and a residual earth trip as well. So it's safety first again for Greg, and you'll find that bit of kit in the resource library, useful bit of kit there. And finally, of course, entertainment, very important. When you're putting your wire transits in, make sure you've got whatever entertainment you want to put in there provided for. We've got a radio, MP3 player, Takes both a stick and a card, a DVD player and a CD player. We didn't want a television because we didn't want an aerial on top, and let's face it, telly's a bit of crap anyway, and you best to take what you know you're going to enjoy. But also I've built into that a mobile phone charging point. You can just see it on the right there. In fact, at the moment I've got an ionizer plugged in there, which we put in when we're cooking, so it's charge phones and a bit of entertainment at night. So that's the electric stuff. I hope there's been some useful tips there, and the key thing is work it out beforehand, get those wire transits in right from the beginning.
So, Chapter 7, electrics. Nothing I would have done different there. You see on the main disc, I've gone for a 12 volt kit. Now, in the 5 or 6 years I've been using the van, I've bumped into one or two people who have used inverters. And basically, for those of you who don't know, an inverter is a bit of kit that changes a 12 volt battery into mains. And the advantage of that is you can buy standard mains kit. You can buy a microwave oven, for example, or a 240 volt heater, or a water heater, for example. So there is an advantage, but you really need big bad boy electric kits to do that. You know, in fact, it's almost impossible to run a heater, an electric heater, because you just kill the battery. Okay. Now, if you've got loads of room for batteries and big solar collectors, then maybe that you want to think about that. Okay. But I chose to go for standard 12 volt, and for example, on my water heater, I've got a 3-way, so it's 12 volt when I'm driving, 240 volt if I got hookup, but when I haven't got hookup, it's gas. The thing with gas is the energy you can get in propane and butane gas is much denser than you get in a battery. It's roughly 10 times. If your battery's super efficient, and they never are, for each sort of bit of space, you can cram 10 times the amount of energy in a gas bottle than you can in a battery. So you can see why you've got to be absolutely sure you can get your batteries topped up and charged up if you're going through the inverter route. But some people do, and they're quite happy with it. It depends what you want to do, so just bear that in mind. Apart from that, I think it's the only thing I need to say about electrics. Never had any issues at all. Oh, I'm glad. There is one more thing, and this is the great thing about the community. You learn things as you go along. The split charge system, so you got power coming from your alternator and you split it to go to your leisure battery and your drive battery. Now, what I kind of naively done, and it was a bit of luck actually, is I got a bit of kit called a VSR, and you've seen that in the main disc, that doesn't sit there, but instead it sits between the two batteries. And what happens is when the leisure battery is of a voltage that, sorry, the drive battery is at a voltage where it doesn't need topping up anymore, it switches this one on, and all the surplus then goes to the leisure battery. So it's like battery to battery charging. I'm told if you have an AGM battery, which is an advanced form of the standard lead-acid battery, and you have a smart alternator on your van, so it's quite a newish van, I don't. In those circumstances, you need a battery-to-battery split charge system. Now, what I would say is check that out, because if you don't, it apparently degrades your leisure battery at a faster rate. Okay, so that's the best that I can do from my knowledge base. I picked this up as I've gone along. By pure chance, I used I think it's called a Ring SmartCom VSR. I've heard loads of people talk about the different charging systems and what's good, what's bad. Usually people say the best thing they've had is the one to buy. I'm open to all of that. The one I've got is very cheap, and a couple of people I've found have used those and had issues with them. A lot of it is installation, of course, getting installation right. But in terms of if you've got a new van with a smart charger, so a smart alternator, I understand that you need to have the battery-to-battery split charge mechanism rather than the standard split charge. So that's the only thing I've got for that one, and sorry if I can't give you enough information there. You might have to do a bit of Googling before you kick off on that one.